7:30 exactly. I'd like to call the meeting of the Legislative Committee to order. Roll call, please.
Member Chaplin, Member Desart,
Here.
Member LaPlante, Member Renahan, here. Member Selman, Member Zay, Member Garcia, here. Member Basalti.
I'm not a member. You'd have to not have a quorum that moves to make me a member.
Oh, that's true. Me too.
How do I do that? How do I do that legally?
There's no quorum. They move. Someone makes a motion to amend. Chowski is member for purpose of a quorum.
Okay, and I would, okay, so we don't have a quorum. I'd like to move to make Member Pachulski and Member Deacon Garcia
Members of the committee.
members of the committee.
I will.
Hey, voice vote,
All in favor? Any no's?
All right, so-
Okay, now.
Now members, now we're here.
Yay!
Right.
Nobody on here.
Do we have any public comment?
We do not.
All right. I'd like to move to approve the minutes for the Legislative and Governmental Affairs Committee from Tuesday, October 26, 2021. I move to, we have a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, now public comment. Now chair's remarks. I really don't have any chair's remarks. I'm excited to hear from Bill Viney, our federal lobbyist, regarding the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and the Build Back Better Act. So is he here
He's
with
on
us
the
yet?
phone.
He is on the phone. Hi, Bill.
Good Zoom, huh, Bill?
Hello, I apologize for being on the phone. My computer's having an issue, so I'm having to restart it. So hopefully I'll be able to see you all in a moment. So I'm having
no,
technical difficulties on my end, so I apologize.
That's great. Welcome so much. Could you explain these bills as they relate to county governments?
Sure. So maybe we'll start as we've got a few things that have gone through passed, right? We have two bills that have passed Congress, several bills that have passed Congress that have provided additional significant amount of resources to, both state, local, and the federal government. The most recent one is the IIJA, which includes not just a bunch of new spending, but also includes the reauthorization of the Surface Transportation Reauthorization Bill, which is a bill that's supposed to take place every 6 years in Congress. And this is everything from roads, bridges, to rail, to public transit, and everything in between. And that is the largest portion of what's included in the IIJA. There was additionally a significant amount of resources that were appropriated or provided for, state and local governments. We've had, money through the BBB, through the IIJA, that will go specifically down to state and local governments. This is the IIJA, and again, we talked a few years ago, or a little over a year ago, probably, when we had the CARES Act, and we thought we would never see this kind of money flowing through again, that it might be a one-time opportunity. And, lo and behold, COVID has continued to go on, continued to be an issue for everyone, and we are still struggling to get out of this, and we've seen significant amounts of additional resources provided to state and local governments. There's some changes that have happened with this new IIJA, and one of the things that I think as we think about this is, we have some dollars that will flow directly, that is, formula in nature. These are the trust fund dollars that will flow to the states and get to your regional metropolitan planning organizations and continue to flow through, and that have no, there's just a process already in place. But one of the things that is different about this is we need to keep in mind, and this applies not just to
Recording in progress.
I'm going to leave here and go to my computer.
Okay, sounds good.
Can you all hear and see me now?
Yes, hi, Bill. Let me just interrupt you for a second. We've got member John Bachelski here, who is the chairman of the Transportation Committee. And we're kind of talking about in committee, we just mentioned about DuPage County got the CARES Act money ourselves and the ARPA money ourselves. But tell me about this, you're calling it an acronym, I'm not familiar with, but the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Okay, I understand that they're going to be trickling down through the state. Is that true? Or how can DuPage money access these for our own DOT?
So there's a couple of ways, and one is sort of the traditional, funding that flows down. It's a formula funding. Although one thing to keep in mind, and this is something that happens, on an annual basis. It comes out on an annual basis because there's 5 years of funding in a transportation bill. And so they appropriate a top line number, but there's an annual expenditure on it. These are things that go to your metropolitan planning organizations, go to your state DOT, go to your state governments, and flows down. That just would happen anyway. Once we have a surface transportation bill, because we have to have a surface transportation bill. One of the things about the reauthorization of the surface transportation piece, which is unprecedented, is we've had the largest increase in a surface transportation bill ever, I believe, in history, if I'm not mistaken. Don't fact check me on that. I could be wrong, but we certainly had one of the largest in recent times where we've seen the increase from one reauthorization to the next reauthorization be up over 30%, which is quite impressive. And it includes new programs like, but programs that had other names that you're familiar with, like Chrissy grants and build grants and other grants that, you can apply for directly, that doesn't necessarily have to flow through the state. There's funding specifically for things like electric vehicle charging stations, which again, doesn't have to flow through the states.
And so how DuPage County, has been talking through the DOT as well, through transportation, about retrofitting our parking garages with that electric charging station situation. And so who would we apply to for that?
So I just shared something so we're still figuring this out, because one of the things I want to caution, maybe I'll make a couple of broad statements. First is the money has just been appropriated. This is the federal agencies are dealing with, in the last couple of years, an outpouring of more money than they've ever had to deal with in history. You have agencies that have received, multiple times their annual budget and new money that they now have to figure out formulas to get out. So the question is, how quickly are things going to move? And I want to be realistic. Some of this may not move very quickly, right? It may not happen in the next month or two. It may not happen in the next several months. And in some of these cases, it may take a year or more for some of these programs to get fully stood up. One of the other things that we need to keep in mind is there is an equity piece which is going to be scrubbed on virtually all new competitive grants, like Prime and Chrissy and these electrical vehicle charging stations, and how the water money is going to be handed out. There's going to be an equity scrub. And what does equity mean? Equity, there's some parameters to it, and we don't know all of the answers. It could mean a certain percentage has to be spent in certain areas. It may be that a certain percent just has to benefit certain areas and doesn't have to be spent specifically. And so every agency has a senior equity officer, I'll call them. It's like an assistant secretary level job of equity. And they're coming up with a policy on how to create equity as piece of this. And this is not just racial equity, but also environmental equity, particularly as we talk about things related to transportation. So it really is both, and then we still have, and we have another new element to this, in that we have someone who is appointed to oversee all of this new federal funding that's going to come out, who's going to be a White House person. You've probably seen his name in the news. His name's Mitch Landrieu. Mitch Landrieu is a former mayor of New Orleans, so he comes out of local government. His sister was a longtime senator from state of Louisiana, and he's going to be in charge of overseeing all these federal dollars. So we don't fully know what his role is going to be compared to the traditional roles of, you know, these assistant secretaries and like, you know, these agency heads like Federal Railway Administration. We don't know how much authority Mitch Landrieu is going to have over each specific entity, and how much these, you know, these agency heads or assistant secretaries or deputy secretaries, how much they'll have to cede to Mitch Landrieu, or if he's going to be more of a coordinator and overseer in setting broad policy, or if he's really going to get down into the implementation side. So we don't have the answer to that. We know he's still staffing up his office. His former chief of staff is going to be coming to join him here in DC here shortly. I believe it is before Christmas, but I don't recall their actual start date. So things that we should really be looking at is, I provided Cheryl, we've done an initial scrub and I think, and Cheryl, you should have this. I think I sent this to you last week.
Friday to the county board. They were
Yep.
fact sheets on everything. Yep.
So these are the fact sheets, and basically went through all of the big funding pots in IIJA and how they're intending to flow, and the information that we have to date on how each of these pots will flow. We'll continue to update those for you because, you know, candidly, we still have a lot of holes, but part of this will be, some of this is money that is gonna flow to the states, and the state's gonna administer directly to you. Some of this are things that you might actually want to go directly to the federal government for, particularly like, you know, you might want to go for a Chrissy grant, or, you know, in the transportation space, or there may be some other grant, you know, there's many new grant programs that'll become directly from the federal government, and that local governments will have the opportunity to administer on their own or compete with on their own. Things like when you're talking about, we know a little bit more about, you know, some things such as the electric vehicle charging stations, in that you can work with a private entity who can receive up to an 80% grant from the federal government to implement these programs. And we've shared some of that with you. So we know some things about some pots. We know more about some than we do about others. And so these are, you know, but a couple things that I just think as we keep in mind, and as we're developing our projects for our different pots, at least for the remainder of the Biden administration, whether that is 3 years or 7 years, equity, environmental equity, and social equity are going to be key components and key pieces that will have a significant play a significant role in the decision-making process of these federal grants. You know, one of the things, as I was doing a meeting with the assistant secretaries who's overseeing the transportation dollars, you know, they will talk about how there's been a history, and if you look at, you know, how you know, some of the interstates were built in Chicago that would divided communities. They don't want to see that type of activity happen going forward. They also want to make sure that all communities are receiving benefits from the federal dollars that are going to be flowing down to the local government. So, you know, some things that I would suggest to you as you're thinking about just broadly planning going forward are, what are the things that are going to impact our most underserved areas? And whether it's an environmental issue or whether it is a social issue, these are the types of programs that will resonate not just for transportation, for any dollars, but these are things that I would keep in mind going forward, because it is going to play a significant role, at least for the next 3 years, maybe the next 7 years, or even longer. Going
Underserved
forward.
areas are going to be key. I mean, I'm confused by that. I thought it would be more about need. For example, on I-80 this morning, there was a pothole in a bridge where the rebar was showing. That would,
So-
if you hit that pothole where the rebar is showing broken away for the pavement, that would affect rich people, poor people, whoever's driving on I-80 through that pothole. And that's state dollars right there. That would be I-80 is a state road, but someplace like DuPage County's DOT, we've got a rough rail crossing on Neola Road. So I mean, I'm still not sure how the money is going to be distributed, but you're saying based on need.
So the formula money is
based on-
all done by a formula. The competitive grants will be a separate decision made by the federal government, or in some cases will flow from the states down that you'll have to compete for. The formula grants are just pure formula. There's nothing different that will happen with those dollars going forward. It is we'll call them discretionary, although that's not the exact right term of art for them, but we'll call them the competitive dollars. Maybe that's a better term. These are the dollars where the equity piece is going to play a significant role. And these are like direct grants from the federal government. These are not the formula dollars. The formula dollars have to flow, and DOT is already working on the charts. And again, it's all based on a formula, and there's a bunch of factors that go into that have been set for, years and years and years, and that will not change going forward. I'm talking about the additional dollars, the dollars that we would go talk directly to the federal government about.
Member Pachowski has questions.
You brought up this Mitch LaGrew. Is that another layer of bureaucracy? I mean, I don't know. Is that going to be where it goes through? Is it going through? I just don't. I didn't understand that component when you discussed it. I was a little confused.
So we don't exactly know either. And I've had conversations with senior people at federal agencies who don't either know what his role is going to be. And so they're trying to.
Reason for it then? I don't get it. I don't. Is there a political component or?
So really, what I think we don't know what his role is, and we don't know how much authority. They're still developing this, but Mitch Landrieu is going to be housed in the White House. I think he's a part of the National Economic Council, if I'm not mistaken, or Domestic Policy Council was where his office will sit. And he is going to play some sort of coordinating or implementation role on these federal dollars. Now, he's not going to be making decisions on grants, but we don't know how much input he's going to have. Typically, the Department of Transportation gets its dollars, and we'll just go to like Chrissy, right? And which is a common grant application, in the rail or public transit space. And we don't know if he's going to be driving the overall agenda and how those Chrissy decisions are going to be made. He won't make the individual's decisions, but will he be setting the policy? Will he be providing more of an advisory role and still letting the agencies really drive the criteria? Or will he be getting deeper into the agencies? And so, I mean, I've literally talked to the head of the Federal Railroad Administration, who said, I don't know what role I'm going to have versus what role, Mitch Landrieu is going to play in distributing my dollars. So we don't have all those answers yet, but yes, it is an additional person. Think of it in terms of, we've had these things in the past, like you've heard the word, the White House will have different czars. Has been a term that people have used. That's sort of what I think his role will look like, which is more advisory, and he may be doing a lot of things like hurry up, speed up, do the work faster, get the dollars out faster. That might actually end up being his role, but we don't have the official playbook, so to speak, of what he's going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. I think they're still developing his parameters, but we expect his latitude will be quite great in terms of what he can be involved. But again, we're just trying to anticipate it right now. There are a lot of questions. I sent Cheryl a lot of information last week. It's a lot to digest. I would not expect every county board member to read all of those documents. Certainly you should if you want to, but they're pretty easy to look for highlights and pull out specific programs that might be of interest to you. And, you know, we can continue to delve down from there. But what I would suggest is probably a good exercise by, you know, some combination of the board and staff is to start taking a look at those documents and delving down and thinking we might have projects will fit in these areas, and we need to delve deeper in these spaces and develop projects that we think are going to fit in these broad categories. I'm going to pick on electric vehicle charging stations because I haven't heard a community yet that hasn't listed that as a top priority for them. And it's certainly a top priority of this administration. I feel like this is going to, they just sent you an announcement, I think it was yesterday or it may have even been today, from the White House on additional guidance on how they're thinking about the electric vehicle charging stations. This is a top priority for the White House. They want to build this network out nationally as quickly as they possibly can. So I expect this to move much more quickly than some of the other programs, for sure.
Other questions from other members?
Just one real quickly, just for clarification, Bill, you know, going back to the EV chargers, I am one that is very excited about those coming, because if you have those, then the electrical vehicles will come, and it's just like, you know, it's the horse before the cart. But what I'm hearing about this equity basically is that we should be looking for areas where it'll be more an equity situation in our county, where it might be an area that might needed more in that area due to either the population or due to the need. I'm just trying to figure out what exactly we should be looking for in our county of where we should be looking to get these put in.
So I think you need to do all of the above, right? I mean, you know, I wouldn't just go to, I don't know what the wealthiest suburb is in DuPage County is anymore, but, you know, I know Wheaton isn't poor, or Glen Ellen isn't poor, typically, you know, lower income community.
Right.
But as you're building out spaces, you know, and as you're laying out a charging station, sure, you want to do it on, you know, need. You're going to need it by the county buildings. You're going to need it by the courthouses, but you're not going to want to just do the parks in the highest income neighborhoods, right? If you're going to do some of the parks, you're going to want to make sure that you really are thinking about, you know, not just space and distance and that sort of piece, but also social equity, a social equity piece to make sure that all communities can have access to these electrical vehicle charging stations.
Right.
Because, you know, as we hear, you know, and the reason I would think about it in these terms is what a lot of auto manufacturers are going to be fully electric by like 2030, 2035, whatever those numbers are. You know, I think this administration looks at those numbers and would say, if every community has to have access, not just, you know, you drive through some nice neighborhoods and everybody has a Tesla in their front yard, but that's not going to be the case tomorrow. And they are thinking forward, not just about today. So you do want to make sure you're covering all of the communities, not just where maybe the highest need is today, but where the future need's going to be as well.
Chelsky?
You know, when you talk about future needs, I'm in District 1, and that includes Addison or Bensonville. I have a lot of Hispanics who are undocumented. I mean, you know, when you talk about underserved areas, that would be a great underserved area. Is there anything that, because of that unique situation, this might help or not?
Yeah, again, when we're and you know, we I'm sure are going to go after some grants in the next year. I mean, it would certainly be in our interest given the amount of money that is coming out. And the new money that's coming out. And we haven't even talked about, you know, the reconciliation piece, which is still hanging out there, which, you know, might get a vote on in the Senate before Christmas, or might get voted, you know, after Christmas, which includes another significant tranche of transportation dollars and other dollars. But yes, the exactly what I'm saying, these not just historical communities, but also newer communities that have these where they're trying, they want to the administration wants to reach equity in the newer communities as well as historical communities. So yes, what you described is absolutely a place that you'd want to target, whether it be for new roads or a new bus stop or new charging stations or other programs that are in this bill. That is exactly the type of place you would want to target.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around the underprivileged areas about this bill, because I mean, it doesn't matter where you are. If you've got bad pipes in your community, it doesn't matter if you're on the right side of town or the wrong side of the side, you still get the bad pipes. If you're driving on a roadway and there's a pothole deep enough where the rebar is showing, it doesn't matter if you're driving a Bentley or a 1970 Ford Pinto, it's still going to be dangerous and or deadly. So, I mean, I'm still having a hard time wrapping my head around that part.
So the potholes will get filled through the formula dollars, and most likely, right? This would be for new programs, or if you were trying to do a new transportation hub somewhere, right? That you want to do a competitive grant. If you wanted to do an intermodal facility, which is going to have a parking lot and have high speed buses to different parts of the neighborhood, you would not want to probably you'd want to think about, do I want to put that in downtown Wheaton, or are there other areas that we might want to locate something like that? This is not about necessarily the roads and the potholes getting filled. This is about the bells and whistles isn't the right road, but sort of the new kind of bright shiny object. Right? If you're going to do a water program, I would make sure that you're spending a significant portion of that money and replacing lead pipes. And I don't think you have a big lead. We probably have some lead pipes in some of the older parts of these downtowns, but I wouldn't just focus on, the nice part of town. You've got to do programs everywhere, or drinking water. If I was building a new drinking water plant, I'd make sure I was serving the neediest populations first. If I was going to go after some additional dollars, and so it's not the day in and day out.
From the trains to Oak Brook to the industrial park. Remember Lucille Zakara was here all the time with transportation.
Well, because people don't go to work anymore, they work from home. So some of that is gone up, but I know we still have a lot of people on well water in the county.
Right.
And some of those areas are more low income, I think, but I need to check. And we have 10 census tracts that were kind of minority, lower income. We can start with those 10 census tracts. That's where Mary Keating and her community services kind of concentrate. So we do have some areas, you're right, we don't have lead pipes, but we have wells, and we're trying to get people off of wells, and it's very expensive. So that might be an option for Public Works to look at that for grants.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the members? All right, Bill, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We've taken enough of your time. Thank you for your expertise, as always.
Oh, can we ask real quick about the Build Back Better Act that's still pending?
Okay, the Build Back Better Act pending.
So
When will that be passed?
for sure. And again, I'm sorry I don't have more answers for you today. I will keep updating those papers for you so that you see more and more. Because again, we don't have all the answers today, but we're getting as much as we can, as quickly as we can, and we'll keep pumping that out to you so you have it. The Build Back Better Act, it has passed the House, right? And the bill that passed the House can probably never pass the Senate. But in order to move the process forward, the Senate also has to pass a bill. And they're negotiating with really two senators at this point. And when I say they, I mean Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema, and they doing the negotiation are the White House and the Democratic leadership of the Senate. Manchin's indicated, and we're hearing rumors that he may want to wait until the State of the Union to take a vote on the bill back on the reconciliation. I like to call it for shorthand.
And that'll be like mid-January, right?
Mid-January. It could still happen this week. But once that vote happens, there will be a back and forth negotiation between the Senate, not a formal conference. But once they get Manchin and Sinema's vote, and they do need them both, otherwise the bill cannot pass. then they will have a negotiation about what will finally get done. The longer this runs, the harder it is to get done. So if we start, it can still happen in, March or April, but the reality is if we're still talking about, every month that goes by, the percentage that it will happen probably decreases by some degree. Right now, I say it's more likely that the reconciliation bill will pass. But again, if we're talking in March, that percentage will keep going down.
Member Deacon Garcia.
Yeah, I just had a quick question about the reconciliation bill. So does that have anything to do with the Build Back Better bill? I can say that.
Yes. So reconciliations, I think of it in terms, there's a lot of transportation dollars, but this includes a lot of what we would call, what they've called social infrastructure has been included in that piece of legislation, as well as a number of tax items. And one of the tax items that is being negotiated, and they still don't have a resolution in that, actually in this reconciliation bill, which is a big deal to you all, is the salt tax deduction. They're talking about raising that cap on the salt tax, and there's a bunch of different scenarios that are out there. One of them is raising it to $100,000 of deduction. One of them is, some of it puts limitations on income levels, but lifts it entirely. So there are some things in that reconciliation bill that would, folks in the county and folks in the state would probably like to see happen, that salt being one of them.
Okay.
And a couple of other tax items that are included in there.
All right, thank
You
you.
know, I want to ask our brain trust, our staff. Do you guys have any questions that you're like, Desart should have asked this? Seriously.
Brain trust.
Thinking like, why doesn't she ask? No? All right. Anything else?
I think, Bill, I don't know how many senior staff are on the call, but maybe we'll schedule a meeting in January with Bill and the senior staff department heads that are like transportation, public works, stormwater, that are likely to what you just said about the competitive grants. They know to start looking for those as
Are you
well.
looking for those?
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
All right, Bill,
Yeah.
thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's great to see you all. Have
Yeah,
a wonderful
Happy New
holiday
Year.
if you're able to
Holiday.
go somewhere, and Happy New Year, and look forward to talking to you soon. If otherwise, maybe I'll talk to you some of you next week or later
Sounds
this
great.
week.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much.
Probably will.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
All right, well, that was, I
Talk to them all then.
love hearing from our lobbyists. They do a great job. All right, any old business? All right, new business. I just want to thank Member Pankowski and Member Deacon Garcia for hanging out with us. I really appreciate that.
Here.
And
Sure.
Member Zay, thanks for hanging out with us.
Thanks, Tim.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, so moved. I moved. So
Second.
Renahan seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? You're opposed to adjourning, Member Zay?
Well, gee,
No,
Jim, you finally showed up.
Yeah, how- how-
Yeah.
I've been